By the way, we're led by corrupt oligarchs that are completely on the take. And in case you didn't know, and I think most people who follow this show are, but Supremely Corrupt is the name of this segment. And we have a couple of articles that came out this week that call into question the 2 of the 9 Supreme Court justices. Now, a couple of weeks back, we talked about our friend and not so much a friend, Clarence Thomas, and his dealings with billionaire Harlan Crow, the private jet flights that he had been getting, the vacations at exclusive resorts, the university tuition for his nephew or somebody that was living with him that Crow paid for. Well, now we've got Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito with some similar type of corruption. Surprise, surprise. Yeah. So let's go back here for 1 second, and we're going to go to the Alito story, which is a Jake Johnson from, again, Common Dreams Indie Media Award honoree.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Yep. It keeps getting worse. Alito took undisclosed private jet trip with billionaire hedge fund titan. No conflict of interest there. Paul Singer, who then didn't recuse when a case involving Singer's fund reached the high court. No corruption there. So ProPublica reported late Tuesday that U.S. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, as George W. Bush, who nominated him for the Supreme Court, used to call him Alito.
Alito.
Right? So he took an undisclosed private jet flight in Alaska in 2008 with Paul Singer, whose hedge fund repeatedly had business before the high court in subsequent years. Alito refused to answer questions.
Paul Simon, he's the singer, right?
He is, but he's not a billionaire. But he refused to answer questions for the ProPublica story, opting instead to pen a Wall Street Journal opinion piece, attempting to pre-butt the outlet's contention that his private jet trip with Singer was likely a violation of federal law and requiring Supreme Court justices to disclose most gifts. The conservative justice insisted there was nothing untoward about the private jet flight to Alaska. His stay at a commercial fishing lodge owned by Robin Arkley II, a donor to the right-wing legal movement, or his decision not to disclose them. No problem. Nothing to see here. Please disperse. Alito wrote that he was invited shortly before the fishing trip, without mentioning by whom, and was asked whether I would like to fly there in a seat that, as far as I'm aware, would have otherwise been vacant. Yeah, but was also probably about $15,000. Notably, Alito also had omitted the detail that Leonard Leo, co-chair of the Conservative Federalist Society and a key figure in the decades-long effort to pull the U.S. judiciary to the right, helped organize the Alaska trip. Yeah, that might be slightly relevant information. A. Raymond Randolph, who was a conservative appellate judge, also attended. Look for him to be nominated to the Supreme Court in subsequent decades. Leonard Leo, by the way, has access to a $1.6 billion war chest of money that was left to him by a billionaire in order to fuck up the Supreme Court specifically and to buy off conservative judges. Yes. He literally is among the evil consortium that is running this country into the ground. According to ProPublica, Leo invited Singer to join and asked the hedge fund tycoon if he and Alito could fly on the billionaire's jet. Leo had recently played an important role in the justice's confirmation to the court. Singer and the lodge owner were both major donors to Leo's political groups. What a surprise! Senator Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island, a longtime critic of the Supreme Court's complete lack of binding ethical standards, argued in a series of tweets late Tuesday that Alito's attempted pre-buttal of the ProPublica reporting is riddled with holes. Oh, he just happened to be flying to Alaska, and there just happened to be a private jet going to Alaska with an empty seat, and he just happened to find that out like on some weird billionaire shared ride Uber? White House. And would that empty seat trick fly with legislative or executive ethics disclosures? No. How about with the Financial Disclosure Committee? Right, you didn't ask. This just keeps getting worse, the senator added. Right. Did Alito get help from a PR firm? And if so, who paid for that? Right. To write the piece. Ready to get. Right. With the infamous Wall Street Journal polluter page. Who paid for that? ProPublica is reporting who authorized the 2022 ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade. So that's one of the reasons why they're pissed at all the Supreme Court judges. So they're looking into every one of their dirty dealings, and they're taking up stuff. Like we said, Clarence Thomas had been taking billionaire-funded trips for decades without disclosing them. So Alito's probably like, dude, look what Clarence Thomas did. They didn't do anything to him. I got one trip with Leonard Leo. Leonard Leo's got my back. And you know what? Even if he were the first disgraced Supreme Court justice to ever be thrown off the bench, he's going to be fine. Taken care of for life financially. It's gross. ProPublica reported Tuesday that Singer has repeatedly asked the Supreme Court to rule in his favor in high-stakes business disputes. The outlet detailed his most prominent example, which is his hedge fund, Elliott Management, best known for making investments that promise handsome returns but could require bruising legal battles. Right? In 2001, Argentina was in a devastating economic depression. Unemployment skyrocketed and deadly riots broke out on the street. Day after Christmas, the government finally went into default, and for Singer, the crisis was an opportunity. A golden opportunity. As other investors fled, his fund purchased Argentine government debt at a steep discount. And I'm sure our friend Lucy would have something to say about this. Within several years, as the economy recovered, most creditors settled with the government and accepted a fraction of what the debt was originally worth. But Singer's fund, which is an arm of Elliott called NML Capital, held out. Soon they were at war. A Midtown Manhattan-based hedge fund trying to impose its will on a sovereign nation thousands of miles away. And it played out in familiar turf. The U.S. courts, he launched an aggressive legal campaign to force Argentina to pay in full, and his personal involvement in the case attracted widespread media attention. In 2007, for the first but not the last time, his fund asked the Supreme Court to intervene. A lower court had stopped him and another fund from seizing Argentine central bank funds held in the U.S. The investors appealed, but that October, the Supreme Court declined to take up the case. Well, if Alito was not on the court, would they have declined? Don't know. Actually, I'm not sure.
Yeah, don't know.
And that was before that trip, by the way. The trip was in 2008. This was in 2007. So then he decides to butter him up by taking him on this trip to Alaska. In 2014, the Supreme Court finally agreed to hear a case on the matter, specifically how much protection Argentina could claim, right, as a sovereign nation. And the court ruled in Singer's favor 7-1, with Alito joining the majority. He didn't recuse himself from the case or from any other petitions involving Singer, even though he's flown in his private jet and certainly has had many a conversation with that person. That's exactly what
PETA finds out about the butter.
The definition of conflict of interest. Right, so here's the thing about student debt.
Melted butter.
Singer also has connections to a high-profile Supreme Court fight involving the Biden administration's plan to cancel student debt for many borrowers. Are you hearing me, Colin? If the if the Supreme Court still kills student debt cancellation, nobody can pretend the court has an ounce of legitimacy, Debt Collective tweeted Wednesday. Singer became a billionaire by buying debts for pennies on a dollar and then weaponizing the courts to collect the full amount from the poorest people. Alito must recuse, but of course we know he won't. MSNBC's Mehdi Hassan, throw a shoe at him, and in any just world, in any world in which Dems could do politics, there would be calls tonight for both Alito and Thomas to resign from the Supreme Court, and calls for impeachment if they refuse to do so. But in our real world, they won't even be subpoenaed by the Senate. Which, by the way, is exactly what we said, but Mehdi Hassan is gaslighting. Shout out Jake Johnson. Badass dude. Love that guy. Good for you. Thank you, Jake Johnson. Yep. Good article. This is the original picture of Paul Singer and Alito on that fishing trip, by the way. That's Paul Singer.
Mm.
Supreme Court Justice Alito is in the center. And another guest is all they call this guy. Another guest. Yeah, we got big fish.
Another guest.
This was written again June 20th, ProPublica. Give them a shout and a follow, and I will put the link to that in the description.